The Wild West is often romanticized as a rugged land of daring gunfights and untamed frontier justice. But beneath its adventurous veneer lay a much darker reality. Amid the dusty trails, bustling saloons, and isolated settlements, some individuals harbored sinister secrets and a killing penchant for murder. These were the serial killers of the Old West, men and women who turned the vast, lawless wilderness into their personal hunting ground. In this video, we'll uncover the harrowing tales of 9 such killers whose actions terrorized the frontier, leaving behind a legacy of fear and unanswered questions. From hotel proprietors with murderous intentions to cunning outlaws who evaded justice, their stories remind us that the Wild West wasn't just dangerous, it could be downright deadly.
The Servant Girl Annihilator. The case of the Servant Girl Annihilator remains one of the most chilling and mysterious episodes in the history of 19th century Austin, Texas. Between 1884 and 1885, this unidentified individual was linked to the deaths of 7 women and 1 man, as well as injuries to 6 women and 2 men. The attacks, which occurred in the dead of night, typically involved victims being harmed while they slept and then moved outdoors. This pattern created widespread fear and left the community searching for answers. Historical records suggest that racial prejudice may have influenced both the crimes and the investigations. Many of the victims were Black women, leading to speculation that racial bias could have played a role in the killer's selection of victims. This was not uncommon in the broader social context of the time, where racial inequalities often left marginalized groups more vulnerable to harm and less likely to receive justice. Efforts to identify the perpetrator were extensive, but ultimately unsuccessful. Witnesses offered conflicting descriptions, with some suggesting the attacker was a white man and others asserting he was Black. The lack of consistent information frustrated investigators. Authorities arrested nearly 400 individuals in connection with the crimes, but none were convicted, highlighting the challenges of forensic and investigative methods in the late 19th century. Speculation about the identity of the Servant Girl Annihilator persists to this day, with theories ranging from plausible to highly speculative. One credible theory involves Nathan Elgin, a cook who was killed by police while assaulting a woman around the time the murders ceased. Some historians and crime enthusiasts have suggested a connection between this case and the infamous Jack the Ripper killings in London. Though no concrete evidence supports this link, the case reflects the complexities of crime solving in an era before modern forensic science. It also underscores societal challenges of the time, including systemic racism and the difficulties in protecting vulnerable populations. The legacy of the Servant Girl Annihilator endures as both a historical mystery and a somber reminder of the struggles faced by law enforcement in marginalized communities in the 19th century. Deline Lori. Deline Lori, a prominent socialite in early 19th century New Orleans, is remembered not for her wealth or status, but for the shocking cruelty she inflicted upon enslaved individuals in her household. Her horrific practices came to light in 1834 when a devastating event exposed the hidden atrocities within her home. An elderly enslaved woman, seeking to escape what she reportedly saw as unbearable conditions, started a fire in the Lori residence. Her act, likely driven by desperation, brought authorities to the scene. When officials arrived to extinguish the fire, they uncovered appalling conditions in the attic of Lori's mansion. The enslaved individuals found there bore evidence of mistreatment that horrified even the hardened sensibilities of the time. This discovery shattered the carefully curated image Lori had presented to society. However, evidence suggests that Lori's abuses were not an isolated incident. Years earlier, she had faced scrutiny after an enslaved girl tragically died while fleeing punishment. This incident prompted legal intervention, and Lori was ordered to sell her enslaved individuals. Yet through covert arrangements, her family repurchased them, returning them to her household and continuing the cycle of suffering. What stands out as a remarkable moment in a period defined by the institution of slavery was the reaction of the local community. Neighbors, appalled by the revelations, banded together in an act of collective outrage. Forming a mob, they forced Lori and her family to flee New Orleans. Such a reaction was rare in an era when the mistreatment of enslaved individuals was often ignored or normalized, highlighting the extremity of her actions. Deline Lori's story illustrates not only the personal tragedies of those she enslaved, but also the broader contradictions of a society grappling with the moral and ethical implications of slavery. Her case is a reminder of the humanity and resistance of those who suffered under her, as well as the potential for individuals, even within a deeply flawed system, to recognize and respond to injustice. Bill Longley, gunfighter. Bill Longley was a notorious figure in the Old West, remembered for his volatile temperament and troubling behavior. By the age of 20, he had already taken multiple lives, establishing a reputation as a dangerous and unpredictable man. Longley was known for reacting violently to even minor provocations, and his deeply ingrained prejudices often guided his choice of victims. Historical accounts suggest that Black and Mexican individuals were frequent targets of his aggression, reflecting the racial tensions of the time. One grim incident involved 3 freed Black men, Green Evans, Pryor Evans, and Ned, whom Longley and his companions encountered while they were traveling to visit friends. Longley and his group allegedly held the men at gunpoint, creating a tense and fearful situation. In their attempt to escape, Green Evans was fatally shot, an act that underscores the lack of justice and protection for marginalized groups in that era. Longley's crimes eventually extended to those he once held close. His final known victim was Wilson Anderson, a childhood friend. This act marked a turning point in Longley's life, intensifying efforts to bring him to justice. Already a wanted man, his actions prompted higher bounties and galvanized local communities and vigilante groups to pursue him. After a period of evasion, Longley was eventually captured and convicted of his crimes. His execution, however, became a grim and controversial affair. Accounts describe a poorly conducted hanging in which the rope initially failed, prolonging his death. The botched process was emblematic of the rough and ready nature of frontier justice, which often lacked the procedural rigor of modern systems. Longley's story sheds light on the complexities of law and order in the Old West. Longley remains a vivid example of how the volatile environment of the frontier both shaped and amplified individual behavior, leaving behind a legacy marked by both infamy and cautionary lessons. Liver-eating Johnson. John Jeremiah Garrison Johnston, better known as Liver-eating Johnson, was a mountain man whose life is steeped in myth and larger-than-life tales. Much of what is said about him blurs the line between fact and folklore, with the most famous story being the origin of his grim nickname. According to legend, Johnston's wife, a member of the Flathead tribe, was killed by members of the Crow Nation. This tragedy allegedly spurred Johnston to seek vengeance, resulting in a long and storied feud with the Crow. The tale goes that he killed many members of the tribe and, as an ultimate insult, consumed their livers, a significant act in Crow beliefs due to the organ's spiritual importance. However, historical analysis casts doubt on the literal truth of these claims. Most historians agree that Johnston likely never consumed anyone's liver. The nickname may have originated from a dark joke he shared or exaggerated stories spread by others. Such rumors were common in the Old West, where larger-than-life reputations were often crafted through word of mouth, blending truth with dramatic embellishment. Interestingly, the story takes an unexpected turn, with accounts suggesting that Johnston eventually made peace with the Crow Nation. This reconciliation, if true, contradicts the narrative of relentless hostility and paints a more nuanced picture of Johnston's relationships with Native American tribes. In fact, the Crow were known to have positive interactions with some frontiersmen, raising questions about the extent of Johnston's supposed feud and the accuracy of the tales surrounding him. Johnston's later years were far removed from the dramatic legends of his youth. He died in 1900, reportedly impoverished and without close family. The story of Liver-Eating Johnson exemplifies how the Old West became a fertile ground for legends, often blending reality with hyperbole. It serves as a reminder of the need to critically examine historical narratives while appreciating the cultural context in which such stories arose. James Miller, outlaw. James Miller, known by his ominous nickname Miller the Killer, led a double life that baffled those who knew him. Outwardly, he was a respected and devout man, often referred to as Deacon Miller, due to his regular church attendance and disciplined lifestyle. He abstained from smoking, drinking, and other vices, cultivating a reputation as a morally upright member of his community. However, beneath this virtuous facade lay a far more sinister reality. Privately, Miller harbored a proclivity for violence, which he eventually turned into a lucrative profession. Initially, his motives seemed personal. For example, when his sister became engaged to a man Miller strongly disliked, the fiancé met an untimely and suspicious end. Although James was arrested and convicted for the crime, a legal technicality led to the charges being overturned, allowing him to walk free. Over time, he began offering his deadly services for hire, demanding significant sums of money to eliminate individuals on behalf of others. Miller's ability to maintain a veneer of respectability helped him avoid suspicion for years. His community, swayed by his pious behavior and charm, had little inkling of his true nature. Astonishingly, he even briefly served as a lawman, further solidifying his image as an upstanding citizen. His dual roles as both a keeper of the peace and a calculated murderer for hire illustrate the moral contradictions often found in the complex social fabric of the Old West. Ultimately, Miller's downfall was set in motion by a high-profile killing. When he was implicated in the assassination of a former deputy U.S. Marshal, the crime provoked widespread outrage. This act revealed the extent of his dark activities, and an incensed mob took justice into their own hands. His end was dramatic, marked by his defiant final words, reportedly shouted just moments before his execution. Miller's life and eventual downfall serve as a striking example of how appearances in the Old West could be profoundly deceiving. Charles Kennedy. Charles Kennedy was a mountain man residing near Eagle Nest, New Mexico, during the 1870s. His story took a shocking turn when his wife fled to a local saloon in a state of panic and distress. Tearfully, she revealed a horrifying secret about her husband. Charles had been inviting travelers into their home under friendly pretenses, only to harm them and take their belongings. This revelation sent shockwaves through the community, as it suggested a chilling betrayal of the trust that was often vital in the isolated frontier. The incident that prompted her escape was particularly disturbing. The previous night, Charles had allegedly invited a traveler into their home. His young son, present in the room, unwittingly exposed Charles's sinister activities. When the traveler asked about the presence of Native Americans in the area, the boy reportedly responded with an innocent but alarming remark. "Can't you smell the one Papa put under the floor?" This statement infuriated Charles, leading to a series of tragic events. Overcome with anger, he allegedly ended the lives of both the traveler and his son, later confining his wife inside the home. In a daring bid for freedom, Charles's wife waited until he became heavily intoxicated. Seizing the moment, she escaped through the chimney, making her way to safety and exposing his actions to the townspeople. Her account galvanized the community, which sought justice for the crime she described. Among those who pursued Charles was Clay Allison, a well-known figure in the region reputed for his skill with firearms. Charles was eventually apprehended and brought to the local courthouse. However, tensions escalated when rumors spread that his lawyer might secure his release. Fearful that justice would not be served, a group of townspeople decided to intervene directly. They removed him from his cell and ensured he would face consequences for his alleged crimes. The story of Charles Kennedy underscores the volatile nature of frontier justice in the Old West. In remote areas with limited legal oversight, communities often took action to address perceived threats. While the events surrounding Kennedy's life and death reflect the moral complexities of that era, They also highlight the desperation and distrust that could arise in such an unforgiving environment. Boon Helm. Levi Boon Helm, often referred to as the Kentucky Cannibal, was a notorious figure in the Old West. Known for his rugged life as a mountain man and gunslinger, Boon Helm's reputation was cemented not only by his acts of crime, but by the chilling stories that followed him. Before joining a gang that was infamous for theft and violence across Oregon and Idaho, Boon had already gained notoriety for taking multiple lives in various confrontations. One of the most infamous tales about Helm occurred during a harsh winter. He and several companions were caught in a relentless snowstorm, an event that led to tragic consequences. The harsh conditions claimed the lives of all the men and animals except for Boon and a man named Burton. Stranded and desperate, they stumbled upon an abandoned cabin, only to discover it offered no sustenance. Boon later recounted that while he was trying to start a fire, he heard a gunshot and found that Burton had tragically taken his own life. Facing starvation, Boon made a decision that would become a defining part of his legend. He used Burton's remains as a means to survive. This harrowing experience did not deter Boon from returning to his outlaw lifestyle. He rejoined the gang and continued his criminal exploits, but his evasion of justice came to an end when law enforcement finally captured him and his accomplices. Standing trial, Boon attempted to justify his actions and defend himself, but the evidence and his reputation sealed his fate. He was ultimately convicted and executed by hanging. The story of Levi Boon Helm highlights the extreme conditions and moral complexities of frontier life. While some of his actions can be contextualized by survival in a brutal environment, his overall life of crime suggests a pattern of violence and disregard for others. Boon's life and death reflect the darker side of the Old West, where the line between survival and criminality often blurred, and justice, though delayed, was eventually served. The Bloody Benders. The Bloody Benders were a family of 4 who settled in Osage Township, Kansas, around late 1870. While they appeared to be a simple, hard-working family, their reputation would later be tied to as many as 21 mysterious deaths. Life in the Old West often came with inherent risks, and for many weary travelers, the promise of a peaceful place to rest was invaluable. The Benders exploited this need, presenting themselves as a welcoming family offering a cozy inn for passing guests. Their strategy involved playing the role of hospitable hosts. Visitors would find themselves welcomed warmly, but behind this facade, the Benders had sinister intentions. A recurring account from near victims described a peculiar setup at the inn. A sheet hung as a divider in one room, hiding the men of the family. The women, Ma Bender and her daughter Kate, would invite guests to sit in a specific chair that faced away from the partition. When some guests declined, tensions rose. Accounts mentioned that Ma Bender would become visibly frustrated, and at times the men would emerge from behind the sheet, creating an unnerving atmosphere. These stories suggest that guests who avoided the chair may have unknowingly escaped a dangerous fate. Ultimately, the Benders disappeared before authorities could apprehend them, leaving many unanswered questions about their fate. Despite extensive searches, no definitive trace of them was ever found. The chilling story of the Benders remains a haunting reminder of how trust could be easily manipulated in a time of limited law enforcement and vast, unmonitored landscapes. Stephen D. Richards. Stephen D. Richards has often been compared to modern-day figures like Ted Bundy due to his unsettling charm and composed demeanor. However, in his own time, he earned the nickname the Nebraska Fiend. Richards was known for being articulate and personable, traits that belied the darker aspects of his nature. Unlike Bundy, Richards did not appear to target a specific type of victim. His actions were unpredictable, including disputes that ended fatally and an incident involving a family of 4. Historical records suggest he rationalized his actions with disturbing detachment, likening them to routine, emotionless tasks. Such statements offer a glimpse into his mindset and the lack of remorse that characterized his behavior. In total, Richards was responsible for 9 deaths. However, his actions did not go unpunished. In 1879, justice was served, and he was executed for his crimes. His story stands as a chilling reminder of how dangerous individuals could blend seamlessly into society, even in the rugged and often lawless landscape of the Wild West.
Please like and share if you find the video content interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss the upcoming interesting videos. Thanks for watching.